So most of us going into 2024 thought, wow, this will be a year of great improvement over 2023. And yet, how many of us found ourselves navigating challenges we weren't expecting to face, navigating an election year, 2 hurricanes, and again, this year continued to be one for the books. We say that every year, by the way. It's a year for the books. Living our lives more proactively was part of what we tried to do. We had a more conscious awareness and wanted peace and unity for the world. And this year also reminded us, like none other, that nothing in life is permanent. And that perhaps we needed to stop holding on so tightly to our plans and our desires for life. This year we got better at learning the value of surrendering and trusting that whatever is happening or is about to happen is outside of our control. And holding on to the wheel and steering tightly is not going to make it an easier ride. If anything, we're going to walk away with sore arms, and the car's still going to go where the car needs to go. Surrendering is the point at which we become completely vulnerable. It's that place where we can absolutely stop resisting and we don't feel the need to steer anymore. And when we surrender, the goal is to become the observer of our experience, not the person stuck in the experience. To rise above and look at it and say, wow, what's happening here? Not, oh my God, what's happening here? It's a different perspective. Watching and learning and trusting that no matter how difficult the challenge, we are always going to be led to what is meant for us to experience. And there's always an opportunity in every challenge, every argument, every difficulty, every financial stressful moment for us to grow. That's what it's all about. We're only here to learn and to grow. To use that spiritual presence to guide ourselves and to say, how am I getting better in life? Am I getting better in life? Am I still doing the things I was doing 10 years ago, 10 weeks ago, 10 months ago? As I've shared in the past, I like to visualize surrendering as the ride down the lazy river. That's my favorite visual. And if you've ever been on a lazy river, you know what I'm talking about. You get in an inner tube in a very fast-moving piece of water, right? The water's moving very quickly, and you get in, and you have to let go of the wall, and then you go. And you're like, oh my gosh, where am I going? Where am I going, right? But then all of a sudden, after about 2 minutes of carrying on, you lay back and you're like, hey, this is a pretty nice ride. I think I'm kind of liking this. Maybe I'll go around again. And then you never want to get off because it's so peaceful not to be in charge for once. Not to be in charge. I know some people like to jump out of planes. You remember Bobby? Bobby's still doing crazy things. I think it was Christmas Day, jumped into an ice cold pond. And he sent a video not too long ago, maybe during the summer, of him driving a tractor across the lawn. Bobby has no sight, just for those who don't know him. Bobby is the biggest daredevil I know. And he lives life as though he has more eyes than most of us, and definitely more courage. But whether you're jumping out of a plane and just free falling, or you're riding down the lazy river, the idea is to understand the process of divine surrender, where we move from that complete and utter fear into allowing ourselves to be carried through an experience with nothing but faith and trust. We become the observer. We observe ourselves going through the experience, and we're able to be fully objective as we do if faith and trust are present. That's the idea. In the surrender experiment, Michael Singer talks about his own personal journey of letting go and becoming the observer in the process. And he points out that we can have a very successful external life while at the same time achieving and experiencing inner peace and freedom. He says, if we're willing to remain in the seat of the observer as a witness conscious of what's happening, then we can let go of all personal preferences in our current experience. And that's what this is all about. It's about witness consciousness. I see it, I'm watching it, I'm observing it, but I'm trusting, not just when life is going well, I'm trusting the universe to take me to where I need to go. But sometimes people get so locked into the reality of their beliefs around any experience that there is simply no room for any other outcome but the one they're most afraid of. We've all done it, haven't we? But when we get out of our way, everything can change. On Christmas Day, day after Christmas, the 26th, we had two amazing miracles in this church. First, Amy's brother-in-law, Danny. So as I told you, the gentleman working, Billy Marcasano, he flew up on Christmas Eve morning because he was told his brother wasn't going to make it until Christmas Day. He flew to New York. Amy got in a car. After being in the choir, the next morning she got in a car with family and their daughter, and they drove 22 hours to New York to get there to see Danny. While she's driving, she contacts me, and she tells me Danny, who had been intubated, whose kidneys had shut down, and the doctors said it's happening, Danny suddenly had functioning kidneys, and they could not find any of the blockages that were causing him the problem. So the doctor said this can't be true and tested him twice. And Danny went home out of ICU. Now, granted, we know that Danny may not be out of the woods. He's still battling cancer. But the point is, everyone believed the doctor who said the end is near, and the end was not near. How many lives did Sharon have? Jan, how many times did they tell her, this is it, this is it? And instead she wrapped Christmas presents. It's all up to the universe to decide when our time is up. But we do not need to walk around in fear and anxiety every time we're told something. Doctors are human. They're not God. The second miracle was Jeffrey Beach's sister. Malignant tumor in her lung, operated on early on the 26th. Guess what? Yes, they still had to remove the tumor and part of her lung, but oh, by the way, the malignant diagnosis was not true. She did not have cancer. 2 in an hour we had that same day. She is home already out of ICU. This morning, I get a text that my brother-in-law's mother passed. But this too has such synchronicity. So Friday, they told the family last Friday, her body's shutting down. Then she bounced back. Okay, their family has a thing with the number 444, 44 and 444. Her husband, who passed 20 years ago, played football with the number 44. He woke up every morning at 4:44 on his alarm clock. So every time, even our family, sees anything with 44, we all snap pictures. Hey, we think one of your parents is with us. She passed this morning at 1:44. They took a picture of the phone which said the temperature in Indiana was 44. Okay. All of this is to tell you that there is a divine order in this universe. And yet, nobody believes that when they're going through a difficult time. We just stop believing. We believe it for everyone else, but we don't believe it for ourselves. And while, yes, people still have the challenges they have to face, the point is we can change our mind. We can't control the outcome, but we can change our mind about what we see by surrendering. But that requires us detaching from the facts of any situation and detaching from our expectations so we can make room for possibilities to occur and begin trusting the universe we live in. But we have to have faith. We've all likely had an experience in which we trusted God in a dark time and emerged with an ability to reflect upon, wow, it turned out to be okay. Wow, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I'm not saying we're not going to emerge unscathed, but what I'm trying to get us to understand is that when we go into it with complete faith, we're not afraid. We don't need fear and doubt on top of what we're already dealing with. It's more than we need to. And sometimes when we walk out of these experiences, we're able to tell these stories with that proud badge of courage that we did it, that we were able to overcome. But my question to us is this: if we know there is potential for us to survive anything, then tell me why we don't surrender early. Why do we feel the need to hold on so tightly and be in pain? If we surrendered early, we could avoid all of the anxiety. What if, for example, this year really is your best year? You might be looking at your life right now and saying, this couldn't possibly be my best year. Look at the way the year's ending. But what if none of that was true except in your head? What if it's you who's holding you back, not God? God doesn't hold anybody back. God's not a magician. God's an energy. And if you don't bring the energy into your heart, then God can't help you. It's an energy. Eckhart Tolle explains that surrender means saying yes to life and seeing how life suddenly can start working for us rather than against us when we say yes to life. He says surrendering is about yielding to the flow of life rather than opposing it, not having inner resistance. Now, we've all experienced inner resistance, and we try to judge what's happening, and often we buy into the words and whatever anybody tells us. But we also have enough experience to know that resisting gets us nowhere. This is what I was trying to say on Christmas Eve when I was talking about the light of hope. Eckhart Tolle also offers a great example to us. He says, if you were driving a Jeep and you got stuck in the mud, he said, and you were stuck out in the middle of nowhere, would you say, okay, I resign myself to being stuck in the mud? And he said, no, of course you won't, because surrender isn't resignation. He says we don't need to accept an undesirable or unpleasant life situation, nor do we need to try and convince ourselves that being stuck in the mud is acceptable. But our job is to recognize fully that we want to get out of the situation we're in and then be able to focus our attention on that present moment without mentally labeling it or blocking it. He says our goal is to surrender to the possibilities of a better situation than what it looks like in front of us, which is this or something better in unity. We say that all the time, this or something better. Eckhart Tolle says the only place where we can experience the flow of life is in the present moment and be able to accept it unconditionally. Deepak Chopra says that when you surrender spiritually, you stop forcing solutions on situations that you can't control, and instead you trust and have faith that there is a divine force taking care of everything in a perfectly orchestrated manner. You know, ultimately, we're placed on this earth to gain wisdom, to grow spiritually, to learn in the process, and to let God lead the way. And believe it or not, that's when the biggest gifts of our situation begin to reveal themselves. But we have to learn to let go and to let God. And this means knowing God in our hearts enough to know that we're going to be led to a good place. So I'm going to ask you before New Year's Eve, many of you I hope will join us on New Year's Eve for the Burning Bowl service we have here, where we release what we no longer want and invite what we do. And we'll have the fire set up out there to burn all of what we don't want and see it disappear. But I would just like to ask us before New Year's Eve if we could all reflect upon the past year and think about the times when the divine voice was louder than our ego and when we actually felt led versus the times we were trying to steer. And then just think about these questions I'm going to leave you with. In which situations did you end up with the best outcomes? The ones where you were trying to control or the ones where you let go? How might we have experienced life differently if God was at the helm instead of our egos? And in what situations should we have let go sooner and avoided the ugliness? And in those situations where we surrendered, what did we learn? And how has it helped us? If we don't know what we've learned and what we got out of these experiences this year, aren't we going to end up going into the next year the same way? We have to make some serious decisions about our life. In the final days of 2024, we need to take the gifts of this year forward, leave the pain and the missteps behind, and make a conscious decision on the role God will play in our life, hopefully a bigger role than the last year. Let's create a new year in which the patterns of our behavior that didn't support us do not come with us. so that we can get to our spiritual best and learn the art of surrendering. Let's review today's lessons. Divinely surrendering 2024 requires us to affirm you live in a divine universe. Key thing, start the day with that belief. You live in a divine universe. Be receptive to the journey. Trust that you are supported. Number 2, let go of the need to control outcomes. Get in that inner tube sooner than later. Ride the current and keep the faith. Number 3, be the observer. Take the seat of witness consciousness and remain detached. And number 4, let go of the attachment to outcomes. There are opportunities in every experience if you are open to them. The affirmation I have for today is simple. I divinely surrender. Let's say that together. I divinely surrender. And I'd like to close with a quote from Marianne Williamson that I love. Surrender means, by definition, giving up attachment to results. When we surrender to God, we let go of our attachment to how things happen on the outside, and we become more concerned with what happens on the inside. Let's take that in. So we pause for a moment and say, God, we divinely surrender. And what a great gift it is to know that at any given moment we can. As we reflect upon the rest of the days left in this year, we affirm that we will enter the new year with greater faith, hope, peace, love, and joy than we even had this year. And so it is. Amen.